United Nations Security Council held a special session on the situation in the Middle East following the bombing of 3 Iranian nuclear facilities by the United States. The recent aggression of the U.S. against Iranian nuclear facilities has sparked worldwide demonstrations. And Panamanian police arrested more than 140 people protesting against the privatization of Social Security in the province of Bocas del Toro. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. We begin with the information. The United Nations Security Council held a special meeting on the situation in the Middle East following the airstrikes carried out by the United States on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. At the Council, China condemned the attacks against Iran and the bombing of the nuclear facilities, which violate the UN Charter and undermine the Non-Proliferation Treaty. They called for an immediate ceasefire, particularly from Israel. Russia also condemned the U.S. actions, which it described as irresponsible, against a sovereign state of the United Nations, accusing the U.S. of opening Pandora's box, ignoring all the IAEA warnings about the global repercussions. For their part, UK and French representatives maintained the U.S. and Western lines on the conflict, but also stressed the importance of returning to diplomacy and negotiations. For his part, the U.S. representative continued Trump's threats of new deadly attacks, and Iran sustained its allegations are based on no evidence.
While the representative of the United States continues to make baseless accusations against Iran, the international community is well aware of the well-documented and dark record of military intervention, illegal use of force against other sovereign states, and sponsorship of terrorism by the United States in the Middle East and across the world. The facts speak for themselves. All U.S. allegations against Iran are unfounded, with no legal basis, and politically motivated.
For his part, the Chinese representative spoke about the new draft resolution he proposed together with Russia and Pakistan.
Russia, China, and Pakistan have proposed a draft resolution calling for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire, the protection of civilians, respect for international law, and engaging in dialogue and negotiation. We hope that Council members can demonstrate their strong sense of responsibility by jointly supporting the draft resolution to enable the Security Council to fulfill its responsibilities for the maintenance of international peace and security. China stands ready to work with the international community to foster synergy, uphold justice, and make unremitting efforts to restore peace and stability in the Middle East.
Likewise, the permanent representative of Russia to the UN, Vasily Nevencia, denounced the hypocrisy with which some council members are reacting to this situation.
They're calling on Iran to exercise restraint. This is something other council members are doing. We've seen a lot of hypocrisy in this room, but this takes the biscuit. This is a surprising example of hypocrisy on the part of those who, over the last few days, has been whipping up tensions regarding Resolution 2231, which will soon expire. Madam President, throughout the last week, we witnessed a new, highly dangerous wave of escalation. Last night, the situation became wholly unprecedented in nature. The radiological repercussions of the U.S. attacks remain to be assessed, and we're counting on the IAEA and its Director General to issue a clear-cut, professional and impartial analysis of the situation.
And precisely in this context, the U.S. President Donald Trump mentioned the possibility of seeking a change of government in Iran through his social network, Truth Social. There, Trump stated that it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? These are the latest of a series of statements undermining Iran's sovereignty. Meanwhile, on Sunday, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian joined thousands of demonstrators at Tehran's Englav Square, rallying against crimes committed by the United States and the Israeli occupation against Iranian people. The rally in central Tehran aimed to condemn the combined aggressions of the government of Israel and the United States after the latter escalated the ongoing conflict by attacking Iranian nuclear facilities. In this regard, demonstrators, mostly students and faculty members, were joined by President Masoud Pezeshkian, who further denounced the crimes of the U.S. and the Zionist regime on Iranian territories. In this context, local news agencies reported participants chanting slogans condemning the aggression and calling for national unity in defense of sovereignty. The protest marked growing public support for Iran's armed forces and stressed the collective outrage over the strikes on vital infrastructure. And the Iranian parliament voted to close the Strait of Hormuz following U.S. strikes on 3 key Iranian nuclear facilities. The proposal now needs to be greenlit by the government's Supreme National Security Council. According to experts, the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz in response to the Israeli attacks would be a catastrophe for the world markets due to the global dependence on crude oil coming from this international passage. Rising oil prices could lead to energy shortages in fuel-dependent regions of the Middle East, including Asia, Europe, and North America. The Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America People's Trade Treaty, TCP, issued a statement to strongly condemn the U.S. attack on Iran. The text begins by stating that the countries of the Bolivarian Alliance, TCP, condemned in the strongest terms the criminal military attack perpetrated by the U.S. government against peaceful civilians and nuclear facilities in the Islamic Republic of Iran, particularly Fordo, Natanz, and Ifan sites. It also states that this flagrant aggression violates the Charter of the United Nations, international law, and the most elementary principles of the peaceful coexistence, constituting an inadmissible warfare act that endangers global security and further destabilizes the region. It violates the international nuclear safety regime and IAEA standards and safeguards. Moreover, the text indicates that ALBA expresses its firm and unwavering solidarity with the Iranian people, victims once again of the warmongering and interventionist policy of the United States, which constitutes to act with impunity, disregarding the right to self-determination of peoples and threatening world peace. The communique ends by highlighting that ALBA demands the immediate cessation of these illegal and unilateral actions and calls upon the international community to express its firm opposition to this unacceptable attack on Iran's sovereignty and territorial integrity. For its part, China's foreign ministry also strongly condemned the U.S. attacks on Iran and bombing on nuclear facilities under the safeguards of the IAEA, adding to these actions of the U.S. seriously violate the purposes and principles of the UN Charter and international law and have exacerbated tensions in the Middle East. China calls on the parties to the conflict, Israel in particular, to reach a ceasefire as soon as possible, ensure the safety of civilians, and start dialogue and negotiation. China also stands ready to work with the international community to pull efforts together and uphold justice and work for restoring peace and stability in the Middle East. Meanwhile, in the United States, citizens mobilized across the country in rejection of Trump's actions against Iran. The demonstrators condemned Washington's direct intervention in the Middle East conflict in support of the Zionist regime of Israel. In this sense, they denounced that the attacks perpetrated by Trump violate international law, in addition to supporting a criminal and unjustified war by Israel against the Islamic Republic of Iran. The protesters also asserted that Trump's actions are part of U.S. policy to create a war in the Middle East.
Into Israel's reckless and illegal,
Meanwhile, in the Philippine capital, Manila, protesters also gathered on Sunday to voice their objection to U.S. strikes on Iran. Amid a wave of protests, posters, slogans, and mass mobilizations, the demonstrators made their strong opposition known to the recent U.S. military actions directed against the Islamic nation. Through their collective presence, they also firmly condemned the northern country's persistent attempts to dismantle the country's nuclear infrastructure and infringement on national sovereignty and a threat to regional stability. We continue on topic as hundreds of people also gathered on Sunday in The Hague to protest against NATO military spending and against a possible conflict with Iran.
I'm from Iraq and from Iranian origin. I experienced how the Americans destroy my country, Iraq, because of massa weapons. And after that, they occupy my country, Iraq, and they kill about 500,000 people in Iraq. And they found nothing because there was nothing. There was no weapons. And now they are repeating the same crime against Iran. Why? When it is enough? Enough blood, enough killing. When it is enough?
Now we have a short break coming up, but first, remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. In the last 24 hours, Israeli occupation forces killed 51 civilians in Gaza and injured 100 more. The Palestinian Health Ministry registers nearly 56,000 people that have been killed since the onset of the Israeli genocide in the Gaza Strip, most of them women and children. Authorities added that 131,242 people have also been injured since October of 2023. The real death toll is known to be much higher as the Zionist regime prevents ambulances and civil defense teams from searching for the victims, so thousands remain under the rubble still. Also on Sunday, at least 26 Palestinians were detained by the Israeli army in raids in the occupied West Bank. According to witnesses, Israeli troops raided and ransacked homes in camps, causing major damage during the detention of civilians. The Israeli army also raided Burq village, causing destruction of property. Sources said the soldiers also vandalized the martyrs' monument and pulled down the Handala statue, which has symbolic meaning for all Palestinians. And meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, the Hamas resistance movement battled Israeli occupation forces in Tel al-Mintar. Snipers shot down an Israeli soldier east of Shuhaya neighborhood, east of the city, and shelled Israeli army vehicles positioned there. As part of the Stone of David series of operations, the Al-Qassam Brigade released footage of a complex ambush against Israeli military vehicles on the supply line of the Al-Sana area east of Khan Yunis. According to statistics, more than 42 Israeli soldiers have been killed since early June. We stay on topic as following his weekly Angelus prayer in the Vatican. On Sunday, Pope Leo XIV called on the world not to forget the humanitarian crisis in Gaza as conflict in the Middle East escalated with overnight U.S. strikes on Iran.
Alarming news from the Middle East, especially from Iran, are coming one after the other. In this dramatic scenario that includes Israel and Palestine, the daily suffering of the population risks falling into oblivion, especially in Gaza and the other territories, where the urgency for adequate humanitarian support becomes more and more pressing.
And hundreds of South Africans mobilized in the city of Soweto to express their rejection of the genocidal aggressions that the Israeli army is executing against the Gaza Strip. On Sunday, citizens walked along the main avenues of the city with banners and slogans showing their support for the Palestinian cause. And on Sunday in Syria, a suicide bomber targeted the Marlias Greek Orthodox Church in Damascus, killing 20 people and injuring at least 52 others. Witnesses said the man, who may not have acted alone, entered the church, opened fire, and then detonated his explosive vest. According to Syria's interior minister, the suicide bomber was a member of Daesh, the Islamic State. The Foreign Ministry of Greece issued a statement condemning the attack and demanding Syrian transnational authorities to take immediate action, not only to find those responsible, but to implement measures to guarantee the safety of Christian communities and all other religious minorities, to allow them to live without fear. And the United Nations warned that an escalation of the conflict in Sudan would have deadly consequences for civilians caught in the crossfire. In a recent update on the emergency situation in the northeastern African nation, the Independent International Fact-Finding Mission for Sudan described the situation as a humanitarian crisis, highlighting the increased use of heavy weaponry in populated areas. According to United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees experts, there is widespread sexual violence, starving children, and blocked humanitarian aid, which has led to a severe humanitarian crisis, large-scale displacements, and a growing number of people in need. Despite the UN arms embargo imposed on Sudan, the mission has collected testimonies and stressed that the conflict continues. And at least 12 people were killed and 18 were injured in a bombing in Boro State in Nigeria. According to local news reports, the incident happened after a woman in a popular market in the country's northeast set off a detonator while carrying explosive charges on her body. The victims were transported to nearby medical facilities, many of whom were in critical condition. In this context, it is anticipated that the number of victims would rise. The security forces have mobilized to the disaster area to reportedly stop new attacks from happening and to launch an investigation into the incident. Now we have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at TeleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverages, and much more. Follow the page and activate notifications to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the south. The government of the Democratic Republic of the Congo extended a ban on cobalt exports for another 3 months. The Department of Regulation and Control of the Market of Strategic Mineral Substances informed that a decision was made to extend the temporary suspension due to the high level of stocks in the market. The authority assesses the assignment of cobalt export quotas among mining companies. However, the country is the world's largest supplier of cobalt, so it announced the export ban after prices reached a 9-year low. And We now move on to other topics. In China, Disaster Management and Strategic Reserves authorities announced on Saturday that a batch of emergency supplies was sent to the flood-stricken central areas of the country, of the province of Hunan. The supplies comprise 81,500 items, including tents, folding beds, quilts, and mattresses, and will help effectively relocate affected residents and ensure their basic living needs. Recently, that province has been hit by severe flooding, with the city of Shangqingjie and the Jiangxi, Tuxia, and Miao ethnic autonomous prefectures being the hardest hit areas. China has a 4-level emergency response system for flood control, with level 1 being the most severe. Meanwhile, in Ecuador, the Geophysical Institute registered a 5.5 earthquake in the southwestern province of Guayas. The quake occurred at 2 p.m. local time, with an epicenter 17 kilometers from Naranjal and a depth of 40 kilometers. Authorities added that the quake was also felt in the Ecuadorian capital of Quito. So far, no victims or material damage have been reported, but monitoring continues for possible aftershocks. It should be noted that the country is located in the so-called Pacific Ring of Fire, a ring of geological faults that surrounds the ocean and in which 85% of the world's seismic activity takes place. We go now to Panama, as the police arrested more than 140 people protesting against the privatization of Social Security in the province of Bocas del Toro. As part of the government's Omega operation, security forces detained people protesting on Saturday after the announcement of a measure that contemplates the suspension of constitutional guarantees. The action includes limitations to the freedom of transit, assembly, expression, and protection against arbitrary detentions. The decision by the Molino administration follows more than a month of protests and street closures in rejection of the reform of the social security system. And on Sunday, the Russian Defense Ministry informed of the liberation of localities in northern Ukraine and the defeat of enemy troop concentrations in the southern part of the country. According to the authority, army units gained positions in settlements of the Petrovskoye in the Ukrainian province of Kharkov and Perebudovo in Donetsk. In addition, the Russian army defeated concentrations of the Kiev regime's military in different settlements in the Sumy region and targeted military territorial defense and nationalist Azov battalion units in Donetsk. In total, the Russian military struck infrastructure facilities in 143 districts, effectively shooting down 6 guided aerial bombs and 2 rockets, as well as 164 drones. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.